McDonald's just announced a massive recession warning in 2025. They're reporting a complete collapse in the number of people coming to visit their store, with CNBC reporting the largest U.S. same-store sales decline since 2020. McDonald's says U.S. store sales shrank 3.6% during the first quarter. In particular, the CEO of McDonald's said that it's low-income Americans that are now boycotting McDonald's stores. There's been a double-digit decline in low-income consumer traffic to McDonald's, and that decline is now even spreading to middle-income consumers. It's not just McDonald's now that's reporting lower sales. You can see Wendy's, Pizza Hut, Starbucks, North Italia, Domino's, and Chipotle all also reported a contraction in same-store sales in the first quarter this year. And that's a huge deal, everyone, because these restaurants all hiked their prices over the last year, and despite hiking their prices, their revenue still went down, showing just how fed up Americans are now getting with sky-high costs for eating food out at restaurants. In particular, you can see the cost of eating at restaurants has gone up 30% from pre-pandemic levels, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Back prior to the pandemic, the CPI index for eating away from home was 289. Now it's 378. And the big problem with that 30% increase in the cost of eating out is that the wages of Americans have not gone up as much. And one has to wonder how long the U.S. economy can support these real wage declines. Put simply, the cost of living has gone up a lot more than the money that people earn, and that reality is now showing up in cracks forming all over the economy. You're seeing in these earnings reports from fast food restaurants. And let me tell you what was actually particularly disturbing about the recent report from McDonald's is what their CEO, Kempczynski, said. He said that in the U.S., overall quick service restaurant industry traffic from low-income consumer cohorts was down nearly double digits versus the prior year quarter. Additionally, traffic from middle-income consumers fell nearly as much, a clear indication that economic pressure on traffic has broadened. So a year ago when I initially reported on this to you guys might remember, if you've been a fan of my channel for the last year and a half to 2 years, I've done several reports on McDonald's. When I started doing these reports, it was mainly the low income contingent that was cutting back. Now it's the middle income contingent. And that's a sign that you really got to pay attention to. That middle income consumer, maybe who earns $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year as a household, they are now also cutting back. And remember, it's not just the lower end fast food chains anymore where this is happening. It's also Starbucks, -2%. Starbucks typically caters to a higher end clientele. Their revenue is down. North Italia, they're a high-end Italian sit-down restaurant chain. Their sales fell 1%. Chipotle's sales also fell -0.4%. This Chipotle one is probably the scariest one of all because Chipotle was crushing it. They were the outperformer in the restaurant industry. They have probably the healthiest food of any fast food restaurant chain. They are now suffering too. So this is an industry-wide fast food recession. And of course, one of the reasons that there's a struggle is due to the inflation we've seen of the last 5 years and how much restaurants and hotels had to increase their prices. According to Finance Buzz, McDonald's has increased the price of a 10-piece McNugget meal 83% over the last 10 years. In addition, the cost of a medium fry at McDonald's has gone up 138%. And you can actually see this chart from Finance Buzz right here. They're showing the items at McDonald's that have gone up the most in price. These are eye-popping increases in price, everyone. You could see McDouble sandwich went from $1.19 in 2014 to $3.19 in 2024. That's a 168% increase. You can see McChicken sandwich was only $1 in 2014. You could actually eat cheaply at McDonald's in 2014. Now it's $2.99, 199% increase. And then you have a 4-piece McNugget Happy Meal. That went from $2.99 to $4.99, a 67% increase. And so while McDonald's has never been, the highest quality food, obviously, there was a point in time where McDonald's actually did offer value. Right? Their value menu is actually something where you could eat affordably. And for people who are on a budget, that was a feasible, realistic option. However, in 2025, McDonald's price points are no longer a realistic, feasible option for many Americans, particularly low and middle income Americans. So they're just cutting back. They're not going there anymore. And maybe, they're eating at home. Maybe they're actually just eating less food overall. Because this was the other interesting report I read that I actually want to share with you guys on why these restaurants might be struggling so much right now. And that's the proliferation of weight loss drugs. And There's now studies that say taking these weight loss drugs is causing Americans to spend less on eating. According to a recent study by Cornell University, users of GLP-1 weight loss drugs reduced their grocery spending by an average of 5 to 8%. This reduction is primarily due to decreased purchase of calorie-dense processed items like snacks, sweets, and chips. In addition, a Morgan Stanley survey found that 63% of those who started a GLP-1 drug spent less money dining at restaurants after taking the drug. Additionally, 61% spent less money on takeout and delivery. And according to Finance Buzz, 19% of Americans have taken a GLP-1 medication. I'm imagining that's 19% of adults, not 19% of total Americans. But either way, it's a larger share of the population has now taken one, and they could simply be eating less as a result. Now, I'm curious what you guys think about that. Do you think there's an overall restaurant recession occurring because of the economy right now and a decrease in inflation-adjusted earnings, or do you think these weight loss drugs are actually starting to show up in reduced revenue reported by these fast food chains? Maybe it's a mix of the two. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. However, one really interesting point I want to touch upon here is the fact that while these restaurants are struggling at a national level, we're still seeing the stock prices for some of these big restaurant chains go up. In particular, folks, McDonald's has seen its stock price skyrocket. Even with all of these headwinds, you can see McDonald's stock is up 8% year to date. It's up 18% over the last year, and the stock is up 74% over the last 5 years. So this is very interesting. Why is McDonald's corporate stock price continuing to surge even though its fundamental operations are tanking? I mean, a 3.6% same-store sales decline, everyone. I just want to explain to you all what that means. That means that in the same set of restaurants year over year, there was 3.6% less revenue in Q1 2025 than Q1 2024, even when McDonald's increased prices, meaning that their traffic was down probably 8% overall and double digits among low-income consumers. So those are really poor fundamental statistics. Yet in spite of those fundamental statistics, McDonald's stock price keeps going up. Why is that? Well, folks, it has everything to do with the fact that McDonald's is a real estate company. It's not a fast food company. And let me show you what I'm talking about here. We're looking at McDonald's balance sheet at the end of 2024. And you can see McDonald's had $55 billion in assets at the end of 2024. But take a look at how these assets are broken down. You could see there's $1 billion in cash, $2 billion in accounts receivable, 1.1 in other current assets for 4.6 billion in total current assets, which means McDonald's had 4.6 billion in liquid assets that could be converted to cash in less than a year. That means very little cash on hand. Rather, the vast majority of McDonald's assets are in net property and equipment, 25 billion. McDonald's is actually one of the biggest landowners in America. They own some of the most valuable real estate across the country, and that's by far their most valuable asset on their balance sheet. And you can see here, McDonald's actually owns 70% of their buildings and 45% of the land at its locations. So McDonald's, here's what they're doing, everyone. They're owning the real estate in these really well-located plots of land in high traffic areas, densely populated areas around America. They own that real estate, and then they've established an amazing brand. So they've basically done all of the work already, and now they simply make their money through charging fees to the franchisees who actually operate the restaurants. So McDonald's does not actually operate the restaurants at a corporate level for the vast majority of their locations. Rather, small business owners all across America do that, and they pay McDonald's a big cut of money in licensing and royalty fees to be able to use their name and sell their branded products. In particular, according to McDonald's website, if you want to become a franchisee, you need to pay McDonald's 5% of your monthly gross sales. In addition, there's a further rent payment that's a percentage of rent that is determined also by a percentage of month gross sales. And what I've read is that the total rent and royalty fees can add up to 20% of the franchise restaurant's revenue. So if you were to operate McDonald's and do $1 million in revenue a year, you're going to be paying McDonald's corporate $150,000 to $200,000 of that revenue off the top. And so what that means is that the actual realities being born of the inflation and the consumer slowdown is by the actual small business owners who operate these McDonald's, who often do so at very low margins. You can see the typical McDonald's franchisee sees a profit margin ranging only from 4 to 10%. So think about that, everyone. The McDonald's you might have gone to or seen in your neighborhood, the owner is only making 4 to 10% profit. So think about what that means when they have to pay their 20% cut to McDonald's corporate, and then when the cost of beef goes up, or the cost of potatoes goes up, or the cost of vegetable oil goes up, and then, oh, by the way, labor costs are going up as well. This is the other piece to this discussion that not a lot of people are talking about. One of the reasons why restaurant costs are going up so much is because the cost of labor in America has skyrocketed over the last 5 years. Because according to McDonald's corporate, increases in restaurant crew salaries are up 40% since 2019. So the hourly wages of McDonald's and fast food and restaurant workers has gone up about 40% over the last 5 or 6 years. Well, I think some people might say that's a good thing. Other people might say, well, hey, that's not actually translating to more inflation-adjusted earnings because the cost of food's going up by just as much, if not more. And states like California have recently enacted minimum wages for fast food workers of $20 per hour, which is causing the cost for these restaurant owners to skyrocket when their profit margins are already really thin. And ultimately, folks, this is all a symptom of one thing: inflation. The inflation of the last 3 or 4 years is still coursing through this economy, and we're seeing it visibly in the restaurant industry right now. Like, if you're saying to yourself, how could the cost of food gotten this expensive? How could the cost of eating out gotten this expensive? It's due to inflation. It's not due to corporate greed. It's not due to some other conspiracy. It's simply because the Federal Reserve of the US printed $5 trillion during the pandemic. And that $5 trillion in money printing, that vastly exceeded the increased supply of labor and food materials, which has resulted in higher food costs. Another disturbing trend is that we're also seeing the costs at grocery stores skyrocket. You could see here the cost of eating at home, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, has also gone up by 30% from pre-pandemic norms and continues to go up. So the cost of going to the grocery store is up 2.4% year over year in early 2025. And you could see it peaked as much as 14% year over year in August 2022. So it's really tough for Americans right now. There's really not a lot of good ways to save money on food, whether you go out to a restaurant or you go to the grocery store. The costs just continue to rise. And getting food costs down should be a primary policy focus of the Trump administration. This is probably one of the most important things the Trump administration can try to do for U.S. consumers is to bring food costs down. We need to see more food production, and we need to see less onerous rules and regulations placed on restaurants and the food industry in terms of how much they need to pay their employees. And of course, there's a whole other component here outside of cost, and that's also the health and nutrition of food. And this is something that Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the new HHS secretary, is starting to focus on: dyes in food, additives in food. You can see RFK is already getting certain fast food restaurants like Steak and Shake to start changing the type of oils they use. They're no longer using seed oils, which are allegedly not so good for you. Now they're using beef tallow in place of vegetable oil. This is supposedly healthier, also might taste better. So we could be on a big shift in terms of how Americans eat. And one thing is, I don't think the costs are probably going to go down much in the future. I think we are going to continue to see the restaurant industry struggle. And the question to ask is this a sign, an early warning indicator of an incoming recession, as we see the discretionary spending fall at restaurants, fall in terms of tourism and going out to eat and going to hotels? And then when we go to data from the National Restaurant Association, it looks even bleaker. You can see that they poll restaurant operators, the National Restaurant Association, and they found that in February and March, over 57% of operators were reporting lower traffic than the year before. So in February 2025, 66% of restaurant operators reported lower traffic. In March 2025, 57% reported lower traffic. So this is something to really watch, everyone, because the restaurant industry employs over 12 million Americans. And so to have this type of recession playing out in such a big industry, it's something that could have a spillover impact into the rest of the economy, particularly in parts of America that rely on the service service industry and the restaurant industry. We're talking places like Florida. We're talking places like Las Vegas. If you live in an economy and a housing market right now that relies heavily on people going out to eat and people staying at hotels to sustain things, it means big issues, big problems. We're seeing this crop up in reports all around the US. In particular, Las Vegas has seen its visitor numbers collapse year over year. Visitation to the Las Vegas Strip fell 7.8% from March 2024 to 2025, the third straight month it has declined, and the city's tourism agency is now reporting less room tax revenue in its budget. The Las Vegas Convention Visitors Authority, in a report released April 29, noted March's decline followed 11.9% drop in February. So this is something to really pay attention to. It's not just McDonald's, it's also now travel. Travel seems to be slowing. The airlines in America are starting to say fewer consumers are booking flights, more empty seats. We're seeing companies like United just cut back their flights in different airports. And so we could be seeing a discretionary spending recession, is what I'm going to call it this summer. We'll have to track this going forward. So if you guys want to stick around with me tracking the economy each week, make sure to hit the like button. Make sure to subscribe to the Reventure Consulting YouTube channel, as I'm going to bring you 2 to 3 videos of this economic reporting every single week.